Book 3, Stage 6, Lesson 84. Dark, darken. Short, shorten. Wide, widen, width. Length, lengthen. Strength, strengthen. Farmer, obvious, rhythmical.
Dark, darken. Short, shorten. Wide, widen. Width, length, lengthen. Strength, strengthen. Farmer, obvious, rhythmical.
We can sometimes form verbs from certain adjectives or nouns by adding the letters en. For example, from the adjective dark, we can make the verb to darken, which means to make darker. Other examples are short, shorten, wide, widen, etc. So, how do we form verbs from certain adjectives or nouns? How do we form verbs from certain adjectives or nouns?
We form verbs from certain adjectives or nouns by adding the letters en right at the end.
Give me some examples, please.
Dark, darken, short, shorten, wide, widen.
Okay, very good. What does the verb to darken mean? What does the verb to darken mean?
The verb to darken means to make darker.
That's it. If our trousers are too short, what must we do to them? If our trousers are too short, what must we do to them?
If our trousers are too short, we must lengthen them.
And what do you think is the best way to strengthen the friendship between the different countries of the world? What do you think is the best way to strengthen the friendship between the different countries of the world?
I think the best way to strengthen the friendship between the different countries of the world would be to learn how to respect each other.
How does a farmer fatten his animals? How does a farmer fatten his animals?
A farmer fattens his animals by giving them more better food.
Yes, very good. Give me a sentence with the word obvious in it. Give me a sentence with the word obvious in it.
It is obvious from what he says that he's not interested in the job.
We form these verbs only from adjectives or nouns of one syllable. And not always then. We don't say, for example, to smallен, but to make smaller, mainly because it doesn't sound very pleasant or rhythmical and is not easy to say. So, how many syllables must an adjective or noun have in order for us to form a verb from it? How many syllables must an adjective or noun have in order for us to form a verb from it?
An adjective or noun must have one syllable in order for us to form a verb from it.
Yes, very good. Can we form verbs from all adjectives of one syllable? Can we form verbs from all adjectives of one syllable?
No, we cannot form verbs from all adjectives of one syllable.
Right. Give me an example of a one-syllable adjective from which we can't form a verb.
For example, smollen is not large, largen, or slowen, no.
Very good. Now, ache, toothache, stomachache, earache, headache.
Ache, toothache, stomachache, earache, headache.
An ache is a continuous physical pain, such as toothache, headache, stomachache, etc. So what is an ache? What is an ache?
An ache is a continuous physical pain.
Yes. What might you get if you ate too much? What might you get if you ate too much?
I might get a stomachache if I ate too much.
That's it. Do you ever suffer from earache? Do you ever suffer from earache?
Yes, sometimes I suffer from earache.
What kind of things give you a headache? What kind of things give you a headache?
The kind of things that give me a headache are too much work or noise, hot weather, reading without my glasses, etc.
Should, ought to, confuse.
Should, ought to, confuse.
Another word we can use instead of ought to is should. What is another word we can use instead of ought to? What is another word we can use instead of ought to?
Another word we can use instead of ought to is should.
That's it. Should we always pay back what we borrow? Should we always pay back what we borrow?
Yes, we should always pay back what we borrow.
What should we do before crossing the road? What should we do before crossing the road?
Before crossing the road, we should look both ways.
Why shouldn't children throw stones at one another? Why shouldn't children throw stones at one another?
Children shouldn't throw stones at one another because they might hurt one another very badly.
That's it, very good. Should has two meanings. For example, I should study can mean I ought to study, or it can be the conditional of the verb study. For example, I should study if I had enough time. For this reason, we generally prefer to use would for the conditional and say I would study if I had enough time, and use should when we mean ought to. So what are the two meanings of I should study? What are the two meanings of the word I should study?
The meanings of the word I should study are I ought to study or the conditional I should study.
Yes. To avoid confusing the two meanings, what do we generally prefer to do? To avoid confusing the two meanings, what do we generally prefer to do?
To avoid confusing the two meanings, we generally prefer to use would for the conditional instead of should. And should when we mean ought.
Very good. Rough, smooth, surface, seasick, educated, uneducated, roughly.
Rough, smooth, surface, seasick, educated, uneducated, roughly.
Yes. Is the surface of this table rough? Is the surface of this table rough?
No. The surface of this table isn't rough, but it's smooth.
When you travel by boat, do you prefer the sea to be rough? When you travel by boat, do you prefer the sea to be rough?
No. When I travel by boat, I prefer the sea to be smooth or calm.
Why?
Because a rough sea makes me feel seasick.
Yes, okay. What do we mean when we say we must learn to take the rough with the smooth in life? What do we mean when we say we must learn to take the rough with the smooth in life?
When we say we must learn to take the rough with the smooth in life, we mean that we must learn to take the ups and downs of life and the bad times with the good times.
Very good. At a rough guess, how many people would you say there were in Spain? At a rough guess, how many people would you say there were in Spain?
At a rough guess, I would say there were 5 million people in Spain.
Okay. What do we mean when we say that a person has rough manners? What do we say what do we mean when we say that a person has rough manners?
When we say that a person has rough manners, we mean he has not been educated in the correct way of manners, but it does not mean that he has bad manners.
Do you like rough weather? Do you like rough weather?
No, I don't like rough weather.
Which do you think is the roughest game you can play? Which do you think is the roughest game you can play?
I think perhaps rugby is the roughest game I can play.
What do we mean by a rough piece of work? What do we mean by a rough piece of work?
By a rough piece of work, we mean work that is not yet finished or is not complete.
Okay. Ground, level, underground, railway, floor.
Ground, level, underground, railway, floor.
By the word ground, we usually mean the surface of the land. So what do we usually mean by the word ground?
By the word ground, we usually mean the surface of the hand.
Okay.
Of the land. Sorry.
Yes. Are there any shops in this town built below the level of the ground? Are there any shops in this town built below the level of the ground?
Yes, there are some shops in this town built below the level of the ground.
Where are they?
Usually in big shopping malls. Yeah, for example, in Boulevard, Carrefour is below the level of the ground.
Okay, very good, thank you. When a table is not level, what must we do? When the table is not level, what must we do?
When the table is not level, we must put something under one of its legs.
Has this town got an underground railway? Has this town got an underground railway?
No, this town hasn't got an underground railway.
Does it need one?
Yes, it does.
Oh God, yes. Very good. Why do you think it needs one?
Because there are too many cars and too many people, so the traffic is a mess. So we need an underground railway that has capacity for all of us.
Yes. What's on the ground? What's on the ground floor of this building? What's on the ground floor of this building?
There's a reception on the ground floor of this building.
Yes. If you fell to the ground from the top of a very high building, what would happen? If you fell off the ground from the very high building, what would happen?
If I fell to the ground from a very high building, I'll die.
Yes. Where's the main football ground in this town? Where's the main football ground of this town?
The main football ground of this town is in the north-south of the city.
Okay. Are there any flowers in the grounds of this building? Are there any flowers in the grounds of these buildings?
Yes, there are some flowers in the grounds of these buildings.
Very good. Thank you. End of lesson 84.